Joe, thanks very much for spending some time with me this afternoon. So how did you come to be on this kind of rhythmical journey, path, career, or whatever you want to call it?
Well, Ray, first of all, happy belated birthday. So hope you had a good one. My turn's tomorrow, the 17th, so I'll be expecting cards um, from you. So I was a youth worker, mostly focused in community relations work. So I live in Northern Ireland, which, as a lot of people will know, is a fairly divided society, even though we've made a lot of progress in the last, say, 20-something years, particularly from the Good Friday Agreement. We still have a long way to go. And so my interest was always in community relations and improving community relations, particularly between Catholics and Protestants. And I was always looking for different ways to do that. So some of it was through group work, some of it was through bringing kids into a river blindfolded. I know that sounds really dangerous, but safely. And just encouraging people to have conversations and connect and get to know each other. So I just saw advertised one day a city council event that was happening in the Waterfront Hall in Belfast. And it said, you know, poetry session, music session, drum circle. And so I kind of went, oh, that sounds good. Sounds a bit scary, but it sounds good. So I signed up for the drum circle, and I had no idea what that meant. This is in like maybe 2002, 2003. So I went into the room, and there was, as it said on the tin, there was 15, 20 drums in a circle with chairs. And this guy with dreadlocks and kind of dark glasses in the middle of the circle, smiling, having a good time. And you know who it is, it's Shah from Shah Drum. And he just said, come on in, man, come on in and sit down and have a bit of fun. Gave me a drum, and I started drumming. It was one of these things where I was late, so he couldn't really give me instructions on how to use a drum, but I had to go anyway. And within about 15 minutes, he said, hey, man, you've got really good rhythm. And he stuck a tambourine on my foot. So then I was trying to drum and play a tambourine at the same time. And I was like, this is too much. But I just had a great time. And I got talking to him briefly afterwards. And it turned out that just through circumstances, he didn't have transport anymore. He was relying on other people to help him bring drums to and from his venues or where he was working. So I happened to have a minibus in our place of work, and so we would have filled the minibus with his drums. I would have drove him to where he was going, and I would have just kind of supported him in setting up the group, bringing in the stuff, and then just drumming with him, or being a bass drummer and holding the rhythm really while he did his thing. So eventually Shah moved to Ibiza, and I bought some of his stuff before he left, some older kind of drums, but they were still in reasonable shape to still use. And I just started using those drums and instruments with the youth groups that I was working with, because I just saw another way of doing group work, particularly with young people. And I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. You know, I was kind of mimicking to some extent what Shah had, you know, what I had seen him do. But, you know, you find your own style. And in 2008, I think it was the same year as you, actually, maybe, your first training in England with Arthur Hull. And that was the start of the journey. And I went full time in 2008 after that training. And yeah, that's been it since. Still going.
Still going.
Yeah.
Since 2008, since working with Shah, and in 2008, and we're now in 2020, what's kind of been the influences on your work?
What or who?
Both.
Okay, we'll start with the who. The facilitators who were there at the time, obviously my first training would have been Arthur, Paul Deere, who you've already interviewed, Jane, and they were the supposed stronger presence there. I don't know how much of a leadership role they had there. It's really hard to remember because it was so, oh, I'm here, I'm doing this. So, you know, your memory can be vague, but I remember them facilitating and loving what they did. So they were big influences at the start. Since then, I mean, I suppose we have some of the same friendship circles. So Debbie and her kind of gentle way of working would be a big influence. I've learned a lot from her. Debbie Byrne from Ruach Rhythms. Who else? Simon Edwards actually doesn't get a lot of credit. This is Northern Ireland's a small place, and so when there are other people doing this kind of work, you get to know them pretty quickly. And Simon was doing stuff, similar stuff to this, and was very into Arthur Hall's trainings too. And he was apart from Shah, he was probably the second person I ever saw doing it, facilitating drum circles. Yeah, they were probably the big influences. You've been a big influence because we've learned together. You know, we took the journey at the same time, and I suppose a lot of our work is similar. And I hope you don't mind me sharing, but I remember one time you were in Banbridge with me, and your style at the beginning was to announce yourself and take off down the runway into the circle. And I thought this was brilliant. It was like, I'm here, but you were smiling. It wasn't like, you know, I'm here to tell you what to do, and this is, you know, I'm in charge. It was like, right, come on, let's have a bit of fun. So that's, you know, you get little bits and pieces from other people. I suppose there's another couple of people. Tom Morley has been very instrumental in me seeing how he used humor. He had us singing one time, and halfway through it, he said, "Look, there are funeral songs that I can do, but this isn't one of them. You know, so stop singing like it's a funeral." And that just breaks the ice and just gets people to relax and kind of laugh at themselves, you know. So those people have been big influences. There are others, but you've only got 45 minutes.
When you started this journey, who do you think you were, and who do you think you are now? How have you changed?
First and foremost, I'm a youth worker and a group worker, so I was always interested in the dynamics of groups. That, you know, just how groups work, what makes them tick, and how you can make them better. So I always came from a perspective of the drumming is a way of getting people to talk and to communicate and to connect. It could be anything. It could be crochet. That works for some people. Sheila Fox down south from me, her thing is ukuleles, and it has, you know, it has exactly the same thing. It gets people together. It gets people out of social isolation. It builds their confidence. So I was always coming from a perspective of a youth worker. I didn't have a lot of musicianship, to be honest. I played violin up to grade 5 really badly. I played piano up to grade 2, even worse. But that prescriptive kind of, you have to play this way, didn't sit with me. So I kind of taught myself other stuff. So yeah, I came to the drumming from a perspective of, let's use the drums to talk or to connect. But as that's went on, I've hopefully become a better drummer. Not a great drummer, but solid enough to kind of keep a group together. Yeah.
And that's the sense of using the drum to facilitate change and facilitate conversation and facilitate relationship. Has that worked for you and the groups that you've worked with?
Yes. For me, you know, I think there's been a saying in Arthur Hall's work that it's not about the drumming, which is true. It's really about the relationships. And sometimes when you say relationships, I don't mean like everyone hugging at the end of a drum circle. If you're getting people to make eye contact, you know, and smile at each other and have fun together, then, you know, that's a big deal sometimes, you know.
Mm-hmm. How do you think your facilitation style's changed?
Um, I think Debbie kind of nailed it uh, in her interview with you or chat with you. Um, that she went to the Arthur Hull trainings and took what she needed. In other words, she saw someone doing something and thought, "Oh, I really like that. I'm going to take that and adapt that." And what she didn't like, she didn't take, and she never copied anyone. She saw something and made it her own. So I think at the beginning, I kind of tortured myself in thinking, how am I going to fill an hour and a half or 2 hours standing in the middle of a group, waving my arms, getting people to start and stop or play certain instruments, or showcase people and highlight people, um, and that didn't really work for me. And I think getting the basics of kind of helping a group play together and stop and start together are important. But unless it's an enormous group for a start, I don't stand in the middle of a group anymore. I'm in a seat with a microphone and a PA and a whistle, which is really good for getting people to stop, I think. And I hold it from the chair, and I only really need to get up when I want to, because I just don't like being seen. If that probably sounds like a bit of a contradiction, but I don't like being seen in a group all the time. I want to be in the group. So I think what I've did over the years is, instead of trying to almost constantly run a circle for an hour and a half, I've broken things down into 10 or 15-minute segments. And banning a variety of instruments, I think, has helped too. So I have lots of chime bars. I have sound shapes. I have boom whackers, as well as drums, obviously, and percussion instruments. And I have steel drums. And I know from your past life, Ray, that, steel drums, you heard those a lot. But I have little jumbie jams, which are only 8 notes, but they're so accessible and so easy for people to play from the age of 5 to any age. And so I think breaking a session down and keeping it engaging and trying different things, some of it structured and some of it really loose in terms of play what you want. I think that's where I've got to now. I have a short attention span. So, if someone tries to facilitate a circle with no breaks or no change of kind of energy, or, then I'll lose attention. So I know what works for me. I know some people have better attention spans than me, but I find that keeping things moving and keeping things changing really helps engage the groups I'm working with.
Just going back on what you were saying earlier, when we first met in 2008, I can always remember, I think it was the following year, I came across and did some work with you for a week. And yeah. I kind of got myself in this kind of role of the fact that you have to do it this kind of Arthur Hull way. Everyone has to be in the middle and flapping your hands and doing stuff and volumes up and volume down. And it wasn't until working with you that I realized, actually, there's a different way of doing this by keeping true to what's going on. But actually, you don't have to be in the middle, because most of my facilitation, I sit on the side. Yeah. And you can use your voice, and it's, a lot of it is about humor. And I've noticed that you use a huge amount of humor in kind of the areas you work in all the time, mostly, but particularly with facilitation. Yeah. What do you think your particular strengths as a facilitator are?
Humor. Look, I think we in Northern Ireland, a lot of people, I think you'll meet, just because of the conflict here, people have quite a dark sense of humor. It's been this generation and the last generation's way of coping, and so I think that's a generational thing here. Just as like trauma can be generational, it kind of can be passed down. So can humor, and a sense of humor. When I was at school, I was always a class clown. I hope none of my teachers see this, but I think I got away with GCSE coursework by talking and humouring my way out of it. Anyway, we won't go into that too much. And I don't think I was an attention seeker as such, but I think I always had something to say, or something to make. I just like making people laugh. But I've seen down the years how just using humour can just make people drop their shoulders and just go, "It's probably going to be okay," you know. Is that's my watch alarm going off now? That hasn't went off in 4 years, but it went off the day that you're interviewing me. So yes, I do use a lot of humor, but not in terms of like, you know, putting pressure on people or making them feel small. It's just, you know, kind of observing things that they do. If people are walking in looking scared, sometimes I walk beside them, go, "Oh, this is going to be awful, isn't it? I can feel it. I can feel it," and then reassure them that it's not going to be awful. It's going to be good fun. So yeah, I do use humor a lot, but as I say, I think that's one of the things that just helps people breathe at the start of a session and just think, you know what, this isn't life and death stuff. You know, it can be life changing. It can be, but it, you know, it's at the end of the day, I'm doing it to give people a good experience and to go out feeling lighter than they come in. You know?
So your humour is very much to the fore. But what other skills do you think you've got, Joe, when working with people?
None. I just have humour. That's all I have. Look, without getting too deep, I've been a victim of sectarianism. So I had an awful experience when I was 16. I'd just come back from holidays and was the victim of an assault that left me in hospital for the best part of a week. And I went through a process there as a young person where I think the first stage after that incident was I didn't come out of the house for about 6 months. Once that part passed, I was invincible. I had this air of, well, if I can get through that, I'll get through anything. So I got really reckless, and my education suffered. I didn't go to university until I was 24 instead of maybe 17 or 18. And then I kind of, through that, I had a journey as well of counselling where every time I went and told my story or began to process my experiences, the next time I turned up, it was a new counsellor, and they said, the other person's left, we're going to have to start again. And that happened 3 or 4 times to me. And that really left me angry and very, very vulnerable. So when I'm working with a group, I don't know, say a youth group, or like I would be in young offender centres and things like that, I think I can relate to them in terms of, so someone's showing off and being the class clown. I've been there. That was me. If they're really vulnerable and shy and feeling like the process is going to be torturous, I've been there too. And if there's someone acting like they don't give a care in the world and they're messing around and throwing stuff around and being reckless with not just with the equipment but with other people, then I've been there as well. So I kind of feel like I can empathize with people. Instead of going, what is that guy doing, or challenging him directly, I take a breath and I go, I've been there myself and I know why I did it. So maybe I can grab 10-15 minutes after a session and kind of either with the leaders or with the person in question, just have that conversation, just say, look, what was going on there? That was pretty out there, you know, and sometimes we can have a conversation if the time pressures aren't there. So yeah, I just think I was on a big journey myself, and instead of just going through it, I try to remember the lessons from it. And when I see behaviors coming up in other people, then I can kind of relate, not to all of it, but some of it.
Do you feel that kind of makes you quite unique in the area of work that you do?
Well, I'm not aware of anyone else who's doing, whether you call it drum circles or drum work or percussion work or that kind of thing. I don't know if there's anyone in the field that I'm doing with a youth and community or what I would call a group work background. So I think that does place me somewhere different, because a lot of people have a musical background and they kind of say, I want to share this musical background, and they do it. But as time went on, I suppose, going back to another question about maybe how things have moved for me, it's really hard. It's really hard to put your finger on it, but it goes back to I'm not. I used to think I was going to teach people how to drum sometimes, and then I realized there's much more to it than that. There's far more to it than that. I'm getting lost now. I warned you I would get lost in your question, but
No, I'm
yes,
with you. I'm with you, mate. I'll keep you focused. Don't worry.
I think my background and my experience has brought me to where I am now. That's what maybe gives me some strengths or uniqueness over other facilitators. Yeah. One more thing worth saying is that all my experiences of being taught music were negative ones. So it wasn't until I started to self-teach myself guitar, harmonica, didgeridoo, of all things, and even the kazoo. I'm a master at kazoo now. That I enjoyed music. I enjoyed learning music. And then the whole drum circle thing, when someone told you you could play what you want and you couldn't make mistakes, that was so liberating for me. And I won't forget that. So, it's also important to give people that freedom in circles too.
I'm intrigued, Joe. What drew you to drum circles? What was it about drum circles that actually drew you in there?
The noise from outside the room, because I was late, the noise was like, you could feel it in your chest. Before you walked into the room, you could hear the bass drums, you could hear wood blocks, you could hear bells, which I don't really use now because of my severe tinnitus condition. They just cut through like butter in my ears. So it was that freedom. It was someone saying, just take that drum and see what happens. You can't get it wrong because I haven't told you what to play. And Shah is such a laid back guy that he didn't just give you the impression you could do what you want. He was still handling the circle. He was making it spicy. He was making it fun, but he never said you can't do that. And that really attracted me because I came from a background where you got a sheet of music, you practiced it for the next week, and if you didn't have it right, go home and do it again. I mean, when I was in the orchestra in my school, I had a part that I didn't practice. I was an expert in air violining, so I wasn't making contact with the strings, but I knew if I could put the bow up and down at the right time, it looked like I was playing with everybody else. And the orchestra conductor in my school spotted that I was bluffing and made me stand up in front of the rest of the orchestra and play the part until I got it right. And that was so humiliating. And I thought, drum circles should never ever give you the chance to humiliate anyone if you're doing it right. But I would never, ever, ever highlight someone or make them, vulnerable in a group, because that was like, how old am I? 42 tomorrow. So that was when I was like 16. That's a long time ago, but I remember that minute by minute, how that happened and how that made me feel. And so I think, to go back to your question, drum circles is the opposite sometimes of that structure and that rigidness, and you have to do this and do it this way. It's freedom within boundaries.
Yeah. You work it, I mean, I don't know, perhaps this is a really kind of overgeneralization. Some of your work seems to be in quite trying circumstances and in difficult areas with difficult people. And we're aware that, we read loads of stuff about drumming's really good for you. There's science out there. What's your experiences in the areas and the fields that you've worked in, particularly with the groups you've worked in, that this is having a positive effect?
Right. That's kind of tricky because I know by your Facebook post that you're a big reader. And I also know that, there are lots of people out there who have recorded the benefits of drum circles scientifically. And I have read some of those, but just like going back to school and education, I can't absorb those things. I can't remember them. So I could read 100 articles on the benefits of drumming and I will not really remember any of it. Not because it's not good stuff, but I learn by doing. So, for example, when I was in university, we could talk youth work theory all day or group work theory all day, but it wasn't until we were in a circle and had conversations and worked out how, say, confluence works, which is also a big thing in drum circles too, that kind of flow. That doesn't make sense to me until I sit down and experience it and feel it, and then I'll remember it. That's a big thing for me, just personal experience. I'm going to ask you again what the question was because I'm doing it again.
No, I thought we were actually going to get there. You were doing so well.
I know, but see that short attention span? I just saw a squirrel.
That I kind of want an idea of your kind of personal experience of the work you're doing and seeing the benefits of it out there in the community.
Okay,
seeing actually personally people come up to you and saying, that was just amazing. It's changed my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Okay. I'm with you again. You have the chance. Look, when we're busy, we're packing up from one place to go to another, and we're trying to squeeze dinner in between. But I always try to make time while I'm packing up to be kind of available or free, so people can come up and chat and just say, you know, that was great, or that was awful, I'll never be back. But that doesn't happen much, thank goodness. So people will say to you that was unbelievable. I had no idea I was walking into that. I had no idea I'd have that experience of sitting with a drum, something I'd never done before. So just direct feedback is the best. When I get a chance, I ask people to write stuff down, and you know, you can bring that home and record it and think, yeah, okay. There's just simple stuff like I do a bit of work with a victims group called Wave, who I think you visited maybe when you were here way back when, 2010. And I worked with a group of around 8 or 10 people over 8 weeks. And they just come in at the start and they have a chat, and at least 5 or 6 of them would say, Friday morning, highlight of my week. I can't wait. I can't wait for Friday morning when we do this. And I'm like, really? This is the highlight of your week? And I'll say, you need to get out more. And so that, yes, there's all the theory, but if someone's saying to me, this is the best part of my week, then brilliant. And then we can have a conversation of why. And I'll say, well, there's people in here I've been in a room with for 10 years in meetings and, you know, book launches and things like that, but I haven't really got to know them. Now, you talk about influences. Actually, I left someone very important out earlier, Simon Faulkner, in the rhythm to recovery work, because Simon got me back into this model where I'm building room and time for conversations in drum circles. And he's really helped me in the conversational reflective part of drum circles. So people saying that they're getting out more, that they don't feel so isolated, that they feel more confident, not just in a circle full of drums or instruments, but with other people, that they have more confidence to walk into a room of relative strangers than they did, you know, 2 years ago, that they aren't afraid to try new things, because walking into a circle full of instruments can be pretty intimidating for some people. And just saying to people, well, if you can do that, well, what else can you do? You know, or what's the hardest thing you've ever did? Because sitting in a drum circle, once we get going, is going to be good. We're going to be okay, you know. The cultural side of drum circles, where we're stuck in an orange and green culture here, and we have traditionally Catholic Celtic instruments, and you know, the Protestant culture has lambeg drums and side drums, and so that kind of thing of bringing world drums or African drums or world instruments, I know that's not a great term, but instruments from around the world, it takes people out of that sense of maybe not feeling safe or being vulnerable, you know.
Wow.
Because they're
really,
neutral.
that's really important, though.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Because if I bring in a lambeg drum, people have memories of that and baggage of that, Whereas if I bring in a djembe, it's like, okay, we'll have a go at that. I don't have any bad experiences of an African drum, but I have a bad experience of a band walking past my church on a Saturday night and playing louder when they get outside, or someone else feeling like someone else's culture has been pushed on you rather than being a nice thing and a shared thing. So there's that neutrality and that newness in using instruments from around the world and getting outside our own space.
There's no threat there with those, is there? As you
No,
said, there's no attachment, there's no history to those. I mean, it has its own cultural history, but
yeah,
there's nothing outside of that in your environment for it.
yeah. And now I do have a lambeg drum and I do have borons, but I always make it really clear that my drums don't have markings, they don't have insignias, they don't have a history because they were bought or made for me. And at the end of the day, if we turn a lambeg drum on its side, it's a bass drum.
Mm.
So use it as a bass drum. Don't think of it as a lambeg drum. Of course, we want to get to the stage of groups where they're starting to appreciate or respect or understand or tolerate, which is an awful word, each other's culture. But at the beginning, it's better I think, to use the instruments we use to kind of give that safety as well.
Yeah, but that's a really lovely point, and it's something I wouldn't even occur to me actually. The neutrality of the instrument being so important in some of the work that you do.
Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah. But it also gives us a chance to introduce other cultures, um, and remind people to be respectful of those cultures. Like, look, when I started out in like community work in 1997, we could count the amount of African people on one hand living in the likes of Dublin, and it was like so. There's where are you from? And you're not on holiday. You live here. We've come late to this party of kind of multiculturalism. Uh, so to introduce that as well in a safe way, to introduce other people's cultures through music is a fantastic way of introducing new people, new cultures and countries. It's a very safe way of doing it.
And getting people to think and reflect. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, at the end of the day, there's two guys that are very close to my heart here as well. Thomas Annan, who's just an unbelievable hand drummer, pan logos and djembes, and he's top of his game. And I met him about 12 years ago. And Wilson, I think who you've met too, from Zimbabwe, and just through meeting those guys, I've learned so much from them. And they've added they've added to the kind of tapestry here. I mean, who in Belfast had ever heard of Zimbabwean rebel music
Mhm.
until Wilson started playing it in festivals and pubs and clubs around here, or who ever heard like a master drummer just giving it everything? And so it's people like Thomas and Wilson who have came here and really contributed to the music scene here, just the people scene.
Yeah.
Just fresh, new, lovely people, skilled people, and in it for the right reasons.
And what do you think that impact has been on you and the environment and the people that you kind of work with?
Well, I've worked with both Thomas and Wilson, and they've came and worked with me, and I've went and worked with them, and so we kind of have the local perspective. Mine, we have Thomas from Ghana, and you have Wilson from Zimbabwe, and they're just bringing their life experiences and their stories, both personal and musical stories. So they're just like they're opening people's worlds here, um, you know, and they're coming in and they're not just drumming, but they're talking about where the drums come from, and like that's not my speciality. I think I happen to fall into using African drums as a means of getting people together, but I'm not an African drummer, so I leave that thing to them, and I respect and just absolutely love their culture. So I let them do that. They're the masters, and they're the people who know best. And what they do is it's always high energy and celebratory. So how could you not feel good? Even if you don't get the chance to talk to these guys, if you hear them playing and performing, it's just magical, you know.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
No, absolutely. And as you say, it stops people thinking like that, and they start thinking like that as well.
Yeah.
Talking about people being, you know, the benefits of what you've seen happening in your drum circles and taking it out of that drum circle environment, how do you create a safe space for people to kind of enjoy what you're doing?
Okay. Being at the door when they're coming in, if you can, because if you just look busy and flustered and you're like still trying to get everything in place while they're coming in and you're saying, "Oh, I'll be with you in a second, guys," you know, um, then you know that's not helping anyone's anxieties or even excitement or curiosity to get stuck into something. So being at the door and smiling, um, although you know if you ask my wife, she'd say I was the grumpiest person in the world. But when I'm in a drum circle, I'd naturally be smiling because I know what's potentially going to happen. It's an exciting time. So being there from the minute they walk in and actually just being with them. So at the start, you're kind of saying, look, this is new for a lot of people. Some people may have had it before, but you're going to be all right. Look, this, what's the worst that can happen? It's an hour, and then you know you can run away if you want to. But again, going back to using humor and just saying, look, when I walked into my first drum circle, yes, I was excited, but I was also going, what's going on here? So just saying that you've been through that as well helps people relax. Um, Also having a variety of instruments because that piques curiosity too. And they're like, oh, can't wait to get to the chime bars or what are those little orbs like, you know, tongue drums and those softer instruments that look visually beautiful as well. And yeah, just things like that, just being present. I've walked into workshops and other things where people they've given you the impression that they're unavailable until they start and they say, "Welcome everyone. Today we're going to do death by PowerPoint," and you never get a sense of that person. They're just there to deliver something
Yeah.
and get paid. But I think we come at it differently because we know how good a good drum circle can be, and we want people to know that from the start and not just say, "Wait and see, you'll be okay," you know. So yeah.
Do you feel yourself reading the energy of the group, knowing that okay, this isn't working, that's working, I just need to just have a little mix here, have a quick chat, that kind of thing? Do you feel yourself reading the energy of a group?
Yeah, I I've talked to you a lot probably in the last 4 or 5 years in terms of saying, right, look, I think I'm good at the drum circle facilitation, the holding of the circle, the cues, the stops, the starts. I've got all that. But what I what I need to be is someone who has I need to be someone who has this big giant pot of resources. So I've kept saying to you, I need games, I need games. I don't need to know how to do a drum circle. I need to know how to switch lanes when it's not going well, or so I need high energy games, I need low energy games, I need games that people work together and chill out and communicate through playing instruments. So yeah, I just I want to be able to go wherever a group is going. The only way you can read that is by looking at them, and you get gut instinct. Are some people in this group uncomfortable? Are we trying what I think is a simple rhythm, 2 or 3 part rhythm? Well, maybe it's simple to me because I've been doing it for 12 years, but it's their first time and it's freaking them out because they can see them going, you know. So you have to read body language. You have to know when they're slightly terrified or intimidated or just completely disengaged. You know, when do you say, okay, we've did that and we've tried it, and when it starts falling apart at the edges and it gets a bit chaotic or rumbling, as I like to call it, when a group starts rumbling, you know it's time to move on. But it's really important to ask people as well. So during a drum circle, hopefully there's empty chairs, or there's space at least between chairs to kind of go and quietly check out with people. And that's another thing about not being in the middle all the time, because when you're not, the people kind of go, where's he gone? But if you're kind of moving around the circle and you have a drum strapped to you, or you have a wood block or a whistle, and you can move around to be portable, then you can kind of say to someone, you look really confused, are you okay? If you don't know what's going on, it's okay. I don't know what I'm doing, and you know, I'm making a killing out of this game, you know. So and again, just kind of making them laugh. But having the space, and you go back to space and creating a safe space, actually leaving enough space where you can kind of walk around and say to people, are you all right? Do you want to switch to a bass drum? Because you look really busy there with that hand drum. If you take a bass drum, you can do that all day long. And as long as you kind of keep that steady, then we need leaders who'll just keep a pulse going, and we can kind of grab onto you. So yeah, just keeping it safe, keeping it simple.
Do you feel, I've asked this of everybody else, do you feel sometimes I'm actually being paid to do this? I need to perform. I need to do something. I need to show that I've actually, you know, I'm giving them value for money.
Well, you always need to give people value for money. Thankfully, no one's ever asked for a refund or a discount like they would on The Apprentice if they do a botched job. Absolutely, you have to give people a brilliant experience, and you know, you do it yourself. Lots of the stuff that you do, sometimes you do it for nothing, or for very little, or for the exposure. Don't do that anymore. But I don't feel that pressure, because I know that after 12 years, I know what works in certain situations and I know what doesn't. And if I don't, I'll ask questions. So I've worked with profoundly deaf groups, and I've worked with people doing sign language beside me, but that's been really challenging. I've worked with groups who have little to no vision, and again, I'll sit down I'll arrange a meeting with the organisers for an hour and say, what do I need to do to give these people a good experience? And so you do your homework, and if you do your homework and in your gut and your heart, you know what works, then it'll be okay. So I don't feel under pressure to give people value for money, because I don't know, 3/4 of the people who I work with, I've been working with for 10 years. They keep asking me back. Maybe there's nothing else to do, but they keep asking me back, you know. I think there was a second part of your question, was there? That's the value for money. Oh, to perform.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I just threw a loom band up in the air. I think I just go in as myself. I don't know how to be anything else. And I put myself under pressure to help people feel like they're important in a group or in a circle, and feel like they're being seen and listened to and managed. It's probably not the right word, but facilitated, you know. So no, I think the performance part has kind of died. I went into stand-up comedy about 4 years ago, and that's performing. That's a different ball game. That's almost you being sometimes someone who you're not, because I do with like surreal comedy and silly things like that. But when I go into a circle, I'm 100% just me. I'm the person who loses attention sometimes. I'm the person who misses things, like, you know, the kid who has a wood block, but they don't have a stick to hit it with for the last 15 minutes and they're about to explode. So you get stuff wrong, but you say to people, look, I get stuff wrong all the time too. I forget people's names. I call them by the wrong name. So you just be authentic. You say you're going to get stuff brilliantly right, and you're going to sometimes get stuff brilliantly wrong. And if you get it wrong, you have permission to laugh at me. and tell me, you know, how daft that was. So, no, I don't think performance comes into it anymore at all.
I love the authenticity bit, Joe. I think that's really, really important, is being authentic. And I kind of very similar. I don't know, when I first initially started, I had this kind of pressure to perform, pressure to do something, because this is what these people are here for. And
Yeah,
I've kind of managed to let that go and actually just be authentic and be me in the center as well, or on the side. Don't feel pressure to go in and into the middle of the circle and do stuff. I can just
yeah,
sit here and drum and do it from where I am.
yeah. It's interesting. I think you and Debbie did culture night with us a few years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and that was the last one I ever did. And I think you only did it and came to Belfast because I promised it would be the last one and you would never get a chance to do it again.
Yeah.
We had 250 people in a circle in the middle of the city centre. And there was this thing I wanted me and you and Debbie to do at the end on bells. And it was just like a kind of simple but quite repetitive rhythm. I suppose that felt like a bit of a performance in the sense of me, you, and Debbie not facilitating the group for a couple of minutes, but not performing as to say, hey, look at us three, we can play cowbells together for 2 minutes without making a mistake. It was, I knew I had this idea and I thought that's going to lift this. That's going to bring the last 2 or 3 minutes of this massive, incredible, energetic circle to a climax and get everybody whooping and cheering at the end. And it did. And even then it was funny because they were on a stand and they started moving around on us and we had to follow them as we were playing them. But I suppose that's as close as I get to performance. Yeah, but it's always for the good of, oh, this will really get people rocking in their chairs. You know, it's not to show off. That's not our job.
To draw them in. It's to draw them in, and as you say, take it up to another level.
Yeah.
That was actually, that actual drum circle has probably been one of my highlights since, when was it, 2000, and when did we do it, 2012? No, it was later than
Oh,
that.
jeepers, no. It's only, I think
18.
about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe about 2015, 16, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
incredible, absolutely amazing
yeah.
experience. 250 people. What a clear up. What a clear up.
Yeah, and then they wouldn't let us out. So
Yeah.
we got back to the pub. But look, that also goes back to culture night was something where it started with 15 drums and me in the middle screaming my head off and using every last piece of energy that I had. And so again, I'm probably going back to your questions. I've learned to be more economical. I've learned to kind of, you know, I don't even use words anymore when I'm cueing people to stop. I'd be going hit the head of it, you know. But it's using less of yourself, but kind of still getting the message across. But it started with a small group, and then the next year we went to 50, and then we went to 75. The year before you came, it was 300. But the year you did it, I said, you know, we don't have to keep getting bigger. We don't have to keep getting bigger for it to be better. In fact, let's take it back down. And that year, and this is also what I do with my work, I would use a lot of song. So like one of my favorite songs is David Byrne or Talking Heads, Road to Nowhere. And I would use that sometimes in a drum circle to kick it off, you know, if not singing, just the chords and just to get a bit of kind of funkiness into it. But that year we did Culture Night, we had two drummers, Jared Gallagher and Jared Skelly. We had Declan and Rory on bass guitar, electric guitar, and Ludwig on an acoustic. And so we were almost a band within a band, but their job was to hold it together, not to go, hey, look, we're the musicians, aren't we so good? And it worked because none of those people come in with egos going, where did they see me? And I think that's our job too. It's not to stand in the middle and say, where do you see me? It's about, look what we can do, you know?
Look what we can do. Look what
Yeah.
we can do. Just want to ask you, what do you see your role in the session, Joe? Do you see it kind of trying to get the group to connect, release, providing skills, you know?
If people come out with one thing, I think that's good. If people come out feeling like I can be a musician, or I can be, okay, not a musician, but I have musicianship in me, I have rhythm in me. That can be a big thing. if they come out feeling like they know the group they're working with better, if it's, you know, say a staff team or something that I'm working with, if they feel like they're brave enough to do it again because they know it wasn't that scary when they got into it, then great. I want people to leave with a sense also that I've taken care of them, that they haven't just been an instrument for us to go kind of manipulate them or, you know, turn it into a performance piece. Lost your question again. I am unbelievable. It's just there was another squirrel. Go ahead.
No, don't worry. You've almost moved on to the next one, and that's the one one of my favorite questions is that sense of when you pack all your drums away and you close the back of your van, you get into the front, you drive off. What do you hope you've left behind with some of these groups that you've worked with, the people you've worked with?
Okay, well, usually I leave behind a hoodie or a coat, half a dozen sticks,
Yeah.
and a set of chime bars, and I have to go back the next week. I'm constantly on a journey of picking stuff up that I've left behind rather than getting to the next place. Yeah, I want people to come out. I want to come out feeling like they've had a great experience. I want them to come out feeling like they've learned something. I want them to come out feeling like they can. Yeah, that's a big thing for me, that you can communicate without talking, because a lot of group orientated work is about conversation, but you can have lots of communication and conversation in a drum circle, and you don't have to tell anyone your favorite color or your relationship with your father or anything like that, and we can talk a different way. So I suppose I want people to come out and think that really works. They mightn't be able to tell you right away what worked, but they come out feeling like they've achieved something, and like they've do you know, it can come down to whatever trouble I have or whatever I'm dealing with. For that hour and a half, I just temporarily put that on hold. I forgot about it. I had a good time, and I can go and deal with that stuff or think about that stuff again. Because sometimes it's kind of about getting out of your head in a non-substance way. It's about just feeling like I'm going to do something else here. I'm going to do something else for an hour that's going to take me away from all the stuff going on. And this isn't an exercise in self-pity, but we have a lot going on here. We have the whole homeschooling thing like everybody else. My dad's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's for 1.5 years. Thankfully, they live quite close to us. But I know that when I walk into a drum circle, I forget everything that's going on outside the four walls or whatever, or the situation I'm in. And I want to leave that behind for people. It's quite a hard question for me to answer. I just want them to have a really good time, and I want them to be hooked like I was. I want them to come back to it. I don't want it to be a one-off experience. I want them to say, that was really good. Do you do like regular circles? And I'll say, yes, we do. We meet up once a month in this place. It's a $5. There's no pressure to come, even if you say you are going to come. You know, come when you want, come when you can, and you'll have a ball. So I want them to ask that follow-up question: when can I do it again? Maybe that's it.
So there's a sense that also you get something from the experience as well, as you say, because for that hour or hour and a half you're actually there with them rather than in your reality as well.
Yeah, and we're in our little bubble, and I don't have a great memory, but if I see photos of, 12 years worth of drum circles, and it was a good experience, which 99.9% of them were, I'll remember where I was and where I did it. I mightn't remember any names, and I can think, yeah, that's when the kid nearly killed the other kid with a drumstick when it flew out of his hand, or you take away little memories. There's ones you won't remember, but if something good happened, you know, I'll generally remember them, and I want people to remember them too.
Yeah.
You know?
I think we'll give it a stop there, mate. Thanks so much. That was absolutely awesome. Thanks for your time.
Oh
Yeah.
man, seriously, I'm sure I answered at least a quarter of your questions, Ray, without flying off somewhere else.
Mate, you're being optimistic.
All right, we'll say 10%.